Mother's Day is around the corner. Find the perfect gift for the mom in your life with a stunning piece of jewelry from Blue Nile. From timeless pearls to dazzling gemstones, Blue Nile has something she'll adore. Need it fast? Most items can ship overnight. Plus, enjoy guaranteed free shipping and returns. Don't miss our special Mother's Day deals. Save big on the season's most beautiful trends. For a limited time, get up to 50% off by going to BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.
This podcast contains explicit language. If you want to know how explicit, keep listening. Hi, I'm Josh Levin, and this is Hang Up and Listen for the week of May 6, 2024. On this week's show, we're going to talk about the New York Knicks' thrilling, for Knicks fans, win over the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round of the NBA playoffs. We'll also check in on how that whole Deion Sanders situation is going at Colorado, and writer Alex Prewitt will join us to discuss his deep dive into why Korean basketball players bank in their free throws. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm the author of the book The Queen and the host of an upcoming slow burn season on the rise of Fox News and so forth. Stefan Fatsis is still in Greece if the GPS tracker I stuck on his yacht is accurate. But you're going to hear from him in a bit because the man loves banked-in Korean free throws. Joining me, as always, from Palo Alto, it's writer, podcaster, and farmers market attendee, Joel Anderson. What's up, Joel?
Josh, you were very shocked to know that I've run into Andrew Luck again yesterday at the farmer's market, pushing his $2 in his stroller. I think we were looking at the strawberries. You know, strawberries are in right now.
Did you rekindle your relationship? Did he?
I think I learned my lesson after approaching him the last time. I'm not talking to him again unless he recognizes me first. But it's our third time seeing each other. Yeah, just two
ex-footballers looking for good peaches.
just a couple of dudes from Houston used to ball, you know what I'm saying? Just looking for, get some of this good produce out here. So, yeah.
We'll work on some lines for you so it's less awkward. Also with us this week, he's the co-host of NPR's Code Switch. And in Game 6 of the Sixers-Knicks series, he contributed exactly as much in the scoring column as Tobias Harris did. Philly's own Gene Demby. Gene, welcome.
I'm so glad to be here with y'all, but it's too soon. It's too soon to make jokes about Tobias Harris.
All right. Well, wait another 2 minutes, and we'll have some more for you.
Let's get him in. Yes.
And now, as always, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making the show possible. And we want to let you know that in our bonus episode this week, we're going to talk about the Netflix roast of Tom Brady, which included jokes about Brady's divorce, Bill Belichick's unemployment, Robert Kraft's massage habits, and somehow Aaron Hernandez. Was it funny? Did it go too far? Did it not go far enough? If you want to hear this week's bonus episode, it's available right now. And if you don't subscribe, there are two ways for you to hear it. You can either subscribe right now by going to Apple Podcasts and clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or you can visit slate.com/hangupplus to get access wherever you listen. On Thursday night, the Knicks and Sixers were tied at 111 all in Game 6 of their Eastern Conference playoff series. There were less than 30 seconds on the clock as the ball swung around to New York's Josh Hart. Here's how it sounded on TNT with Ian Eagle on the call. Close your ears, Gene.
Hands it to him. Plenty of time on the shot clock. Brunson, drive, swing, Hart. He connects. Huge three. Knicks lead.
I'm just very sad this isn't a video podcast, so you couldn't see Gene's visceral reaction to hearing that. The Knicks would hold on to that 3-point lead and take the series 4-2. The cumulative score in the series was, I believe, Knicks by 1. One of the best first-round series in recent memory. And the fans at the Wells Fargo Center went home unhappy, except for the ones who were rooting for the Knicks because tickets were so much cheaper than at Madison Square Garden. Gene, I believe they call it the process because every season you get a chance to process your feelings about why and how the Sixers lost. Help us help you. What was your emotional journey during this series?
That, as soon as Josh Hart was open, I turned to my wife and said, I was like, that's going in.
he was so open that one had a chance to talk to one's wife.
Exactly.
Like,
he had
let's discuss what's going to happen right now.
nothing but space and opportunity. And it was one of those wild things because it was like, part of their plan for the series is like, okay, well, we got to give up something. We're going to give up Josh Hart. We're going to let him shoot threes. So, of course, because we're Sixers fans and the universe hates us, Josh Hart had to knock down that three. And to your point about the process, so weird that this is where we are right now. Like, after all of the sort of the long saga of trying to build a contender by gaming the system, like we're actually in a really kind of good place, even though we lost this very entertaining series. We have Joel, we have Tyrese Maxey, and if you look at the long history of the process, those two dudes are kind of accidents, right? Like Joel Embiid fell to us at 3 because he had a foot injury. Tyrese fell to us in the 20s. But every other decision that the Sixers front office the different regimes have had to make over the course of this like giant rebuild project, we've gotten wrong. We famously whiffed on a very good Villanova player named Mikal Bridges, whose mom worked in the HR department of the Sixers, is a Philly dude, only to be beaten by a bunch of vibey Villanova dudes. It's just as bad as this series felt to lose. And I honestly, I kept saying to my wife that, even if we get past the Knicks, Joel is hobbled enough we won't get too far in the playoffs. We have a lot of room. This doesn't feel as, apocalyptic as it did when, Ben Simmons passed up the layup, or even last season when James Harden did the James Harden thing and, shat the bed in a pivotal, closeout game. So, I don't know. It felt really bad to lose to the Knicks. I lived in New York for a decade. And just listening to it didn't matter when Knicks fans talk shit because their team didn't matter. And so it's it just makes my heart it makes me angry that we lost to them. But we are in a really, really good position. We actually we can make moves. It doesn't feel this is all over. This is all just a waste of time. I felt earlier that if we lose this series, we might have to blow it all up. But now I don't feel that way. I feel actually the way that Joel Embiid played, as the series went on, I felt less despondent. I knew that Joel was going to be hobbled and I was always going to put a ceiling on how far we could go. But it felt less apocalyptic than it has in the past. You know what I mean?
I can roll with you on this in 2 ways, right? That you're right. You are in a good place. The Eastern Conference is wide open. You don't look at anybody on that side of the bracket and say, oh, we'll never be able to catch them, right? I mean, even the Celtics are far and away the best team in the conference by regular season, but they can be touched. I mean, there was no reason for them to lose to the Heat, the Jimmy Butler-less Heat, right? You're right. Joel is going to be in year 10, year 11. And as a Rockets fan, I remember that's when Hakeem finally broke through, won his MVP, won his championship. Maybe it'll be that. And you've got, Daryl Morey, and we can talk a little bit more about that, right? Down the line about what comes next. But I mean, the one thing that I'm surprised you're saying you feel in a good place. It's not apocalyptic because it's the problem is Joel. The solution is Joel and the problem is Joel because he does, by the time he gets to this point in the year, every year it's hey man, is Joel going to be able to make it? He's battling he's nursing a few injuries. He's dragging himself up and down the court. And I'm just that's the one variable that seems I don't know if you can build it into your prediction for the future, but it just kind of feels from this point forward, nobody can ever really count on Joel being fully healthy, right? Mm-hmm. And I just wonder, as a Sixers fan, what do you think that they could be doing to protect Joel? I was listening to Nick Wright on FS1. He's really smart about this, and I just was he said something that I was that sounds crazy, but maybe they should try it. Maybe start his season after the All-Star break. Huh. Or maybe in January so that he doesn't have as many miles on his body. So I don't know. I know it's kind of crazy, but
as you saw during the regular season, they need him to win games.
Yeah. Right. That's right.
Right. It's a fairly intractable problem. The only solution for them is if the NBA shortens the regular season, which I think will probably happen at some point, but probably not before he's on the real tail end of his career, because the story of this playoffs has been star players getting hurt. The only fix to that, I think, is either shorten the regular season or play the playoffs before the regular season starts, or do it like European soccer where you do the Champions League in the middle of the season and you, I don't know, but I think you put it perfectly, Joel, the Joel Embiid situation. He is the problem and the solution. I know you're in the bargaining phase of the stages of free agency, but I just have a really hard time seeing him ever being healthy enough at the start of the playoffs or throughout an entire playoff run with the amount of minutes they need him to play for him to be able to make it. Like Akeem, sure, he did it in his 10th or 11th season, but did he have problems staying healthy to the extent that Joel Embiid had? Was he like hobbling around? He was like, moving fluidly and dream shaking on people through every series. And like,
I think Josh is also projecting on me because he's a Pelicans fan, so he has like.
Look, I'm in my own hurt right now. I'm processing my own feelings.
So he in his basketball joy is wrapped up in a perpetually injured supernova too. So I did.
We all bring our own baggage.
Well, the reason I say the Akeem thing is that, like, the one thing people used to say about Joel coming into this year is that he was never the same player in the postseason that he was in the regular season.
Yeah.
This is the first postseason that, like, it was like, oh, it's not his fault. Like, he did everything he could do.
He scored 39 in Game 6?
Right. He did. You couldn't really have asked him to do any more than he did in the postseason. And that's a promising sign, right? So, like, there is something you can take from that gene if you're, trying to, find some, light on the horizon. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, considering we have a ton of cap space, Tobias Harris, which we can talk about, is coming off the books finally. But Joe he had a 50 ball at one point. I mean, like, it really was like, this is as good as he's looked in a postseason. And I think one of the things that's really sort of tragic about the season to me is he was far and away the best player in the league this year, for about 2/3 of the season. And because he got hurt, and it makes him ineligible for all the postseason awards, that kind of, like, he's almost like lost to history. It's going to be like memory holes. It's like, like the Sixers underperformed. Like, if you could look at it from like 30,000 feet, the Sixers, they got knocked out in the first round again and yada, yada, yada. And it's like, actually, this guy was the best player in the league for most of it. He played his ass off in the first round. The only reason they were playing a team as hard as the Knicks in the first round was because he got hurt in the first place and they slid in the standings. And so it's just like a bunch of bad breaks. Like, I honestly feel like had we matched up to any team, maybe it's up to the Celtics, like, we might have advanced.
Yeah, what a bad break that Joel Embiid, who's always injured, got injured. Who could have foreseen that happening?
Who could have foreseen? But to go back to the Tobias Harris point, if Tobias Harris was just if he just gave you like the absolute median Tobias Harris performance, right? If he just gave you 15 points a game, right, we probably win the series. Like, just if he was just a league average NBA player.
The D'Angelo Russell of the East. I mean,
absolutely.
Is there any precedent for the three Villanova guys, Brunson, DiVincenzo, Hart, beating the pro team in the city where they played college? Like, it was a weird and fascinating thing because, like, it was very documented. Like, Brunson, when he made down the stretch in these like games in Philly, he's like looking up at the Villanova banners. I don't know what your relationship is with Villanova basketball, Gene, but I don't know if that grated on you or how you felt about it.
Look, like, I'll rep anybody from the Big Five if they like make it to the league. You know what I mean? LaSalle, Nova, Temple. And, like, obviously the one thing that made this, like, losing to this Knicks team okay was, like, I actually like all those guys because they were Nova dudes, right? Like, they're actually, it's hard to, like, as much as I dislike the Knicks just on GP, right? Like, it's hard to dislike Brunson, DiVincenzo, and Josh Hart.
It is tough because the Knicks are just so, I hate to see them succeed, but.
Absolutely. But I like those dudes a lot. Can we just talk about Jalen Brunson for a second? Because his game is so funky to me. Like, this dude is like 5'11". I feel like he's like 220. He doesn't get off the ground. I feel like he does that sort of spinning fadeaway every single time he's down the floor. And nobody can do anything with it. It's like, I was like, damn, he's not moving that fast. He's not getting off the ground. But for some reason, his jump shot is unblockable. He can always sort of make a little bit of space with his body. It's such a funky game. His game almost looks like the way Derrick Rose looked post-injuries, but like he's actually really, really effective. Like, it's crazy.
I was going to compare it to like Khalid El-Amin. All of a sudden had like just grown like this incredible offensive game, like just really polished. You know what I'm saying? Because he built, you look at him and you're just like, how is that putting up 40 or 50 in the league? Like, there's just not a lot of analog for, like, I guess, like, I see Isaiah Thomas, at least not the Hall of Fame one, the Boston Celtic one. Like, you look at him and you're just like, okay, like, he's really quick. You could kind of understand like how he's able to get around the floor, but the Jalen Brunson thing, I'm like, he's not big, he's not particularly explosive. I actually don't know how this is working, but he's like ridiculously effective. There's no way I would have predicted that would have worked out for the Knicks. I was like, oh, this is them being stupid again. Like this is clearly not going to be a thing, and it worked. So Gene, you and I didn't realize that we had. I keep forgetting that we have this in common. We both once upon a time depended on James Harden to defend our players. Like, which is just, I mean, it's just mortifying to realize, oh, my favorite team's hopes rest on James Harden showing up tonight. You know what I mean? In the playoffs, like what a horrible experience. But the one thing that you do have, and people kind of, I don't know, how you feel about Daryl Morey or whatever, but like, I'm a Rockets fan. I miss Daryl Morey in a lot of ways because you're right. You guys are in a good position. You have the opportunity. You're going to have some cap space. And that is a dude who's willing to take calculated risk. Like, I never got the sense as a Rockets fan that he was ever throwing a season away, right? That, like, he was always down to compete and he always could figure out something. And maybe it didn't always work out, but you were just like, all right, I'm gonna ride with him through this. Like, until he traded for Russell Westbrook and if the Rockets, and then we had to throw that shit away. But like, I think like, Josh, I mean, Daryl Morey, I feel like is sort of the underrated piece of this here, that like, I think that like whatever comes next, it's probably going to be a good move, right?
Well, they want Paul George. I mean, the issue with having cap space in today's NBA is that the best players don't ever actually make it to free agency.
Right.
I mean, Paul George, I think, would be a good acquisition for them.
Wait. Does it have to be Paul George? Because it could also be KD or LeBron, right? Theoretically.
I mean, theoretically being the key word there.
Do you know how weird basketball fandom is? Y'all just said we could have Paul George, KD, or LeBron. I'm like, no, I don't want none of those things. You know what I'm saying? Like,
wait, you don't prospect
want them, I don't. I feel like because of their ages, right? Like, I think it changes. They're all a little older than Joel, right? I mean, in the case of KD and LeBron, they're way older than Joel. But like, it just changes the timeline, right? Like, I think you probably get another 2 or 3 years with Maxey and Embiid as your core, right? But if you add Bron, like, you kind of got to go all in right now, right? Like, and I think you have to go all in right now, but I think like with Bron, like his timeline is such that like.
This is just fan fiction. Why are we even talking about this?
Yeah, no.
Wait. Well, I mean, the thing is that you don't have 3. I mean, like, I wouldn't count on Joel 3 years from now, right? Like, do you think, I feel like this is like next year is the year, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. But I feel like you'd have to, again, we have to get capped out really quickly, right? Like to pay for those dudes. And the problems with any of these top heavy teams, right? Whether it's the Clippers or the Lakers or whatever, is that you end up like it's just a mess of roster construction, right? You got to put together a team where like, Paul Reed is getting big minutes in the playoffs, right? Like you just, at some point I don't know how you sort of, if any team has figured out how to do that whole like roster construction thing, unless their superstar, in the case like the Warriors, right, has an artificially cheap contract, right? Like a sort of, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what the Sixers need that Bron or KD or Paul George, and they all obviously do incredible things on basketball court, like what it solves exactly. You know what I mean?
Well, Paul George would be better than Tobias Harris. I think we can agree. I was thinking of something over the weekend, and I'll end my thoughts here. And I promise that this was not intended to troll. I thought of this independent of you being on the show, Gene, that the Knicks, with the way the team is constructed around Brunson, with like how dominant he is, the fact that he's a small guard, the fact that it's like a team around him that's like really tough and good role players, but people that like, you don't think of as stars, certainly, sort of reminded me of the Sixers team that went to the finals with AI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that comparison a few times last week, and it's only made me angry. It's only made me angry. Because look, like, the Sixers, they went through this like sort of really audacious plan to just blow everything the fuck up, right? Just blow everything up and just like get all the chips that we can get and hope everything shakes out. And the Knicks have been run by James Dolan, and somehow they've managed to put together like a more like sustainable high ceiling roster. I don't know. There's just like, if somebody said the Knicks will make it to the finals this year, would y'all count that out? Like, would y'all think that's impossible?
I would count that out.
I wouldn't. I mean, I don't. I just think the thing is, and maybe it's not fair to the Celtics, but I guess until I see them, do it, like I'm not going to think they can. Well,
I guess I would. I guess I wouldn't totally count it out because it seems like the Knicks are huge favorites to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics are already down Porzingis, and if like another Celtics guy gets hurt,
right,
then I think I think they've got a shot.
the idea of a Knicks-Celtics Eastern Conference Finals basically guarantees that I'm not watching that shit. I cannot think of two teams in sports that I hate more than those two franchises. Anyway, oh God. But like it seems like an inevitability almost.
Up next, checking in on Deion Sanders at Colorado. Apple Card is the perfect cashback rewards credit card. You earn up to 3% daily cash on every purchase, every day. That's 3% on your favorite products at Apple, 2% on all other Apple Card with Apple Pay purchases, and 1% on anything you buy with your titanium Apple Card or virtual card number. Visit apple.co/card calculator to see how much you can earn. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch, subject to credit approval. Terms apply. Apple Card is the perfect cashback rewards credit card. You earn up to 3% daily cash on every purchase, every day. That's 3% on your favorite products at Apple, 2% on all other Apple Card with Apple Pay purchases, and 1% on anything you buy with your titanium Apple Card or virtual card number. Visit apple.co/card calculator to see how much you can earn. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch, subject to credit approval. Terms apply.
Last week, The Athletic published a story about how 53 former Colorado players fared after many were run off following the arrival of new head football coach Deion Sanders. One of them was a safety named Xavier Smith, who was understandably disappointed about being forced out by one of his idols. He told The Athletic, "I was actually getting mad, like tears coming to my eyes, because, bro, you never even tried to get to know me." And that, listeners, apparently was a capital offense to the Sanders family and the Colorado football program, and they sought their retribution. Sanders' son, Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders, posted to X that he didn't remember who Smith was and that, quote, "Bro had to be very mid at best." Things escalated over the next few hours, which included a mocking tweet from Coach Prime himself to a teammate at Smith's new school, Austin Peay. Josh, the Athletic story on the unprecedented overhaul at Colorado and Sanders' response generated a lot of attention for a team that was 4-8 last year. So what did you think of the story, and what do you think it said about Deion's program?
I thought the story by Max Olson, The Athletic, was really well reported, and it's something that I was interested in to figure out where all these Colorado players had been. I don't know if it's fair. I wouldn't frame it this way to say it like shows that Deion was right, but it is notable that it doesn't seem like many or maybe any of those players have really starred at any of their new schools. And so from a purely like pragmatic, like we've got to get the chaff out of here, it seems like maybe Deion's evaluation of the roster wasn't completely wrong. But I think the story also affirmed what we knew or we thought we knew about him and the way that he treats people. Like, dude's a dick. Like, he did not give the players the grace or the respect to really treat them as human beings, and be kind, or just simply like uphold the like basic standards of human decency. And again, if we're like getting to the like practical, the only thing that matters is winning, Gene, the thing to be concerned about is like Cormani McLean, the star recruit in their recruiting class, like 5-star guy who's like indisputably great and not one of these, guys who maybe wasn't good enough to be a star at a top program. He's like leaving and saying, I want to play for more than clicks. Like, it seems like one reason to be nice to people is just to not be a dick. Another reason is like, because maybe the guys who you actually do want in your program are you going to see how you treat their peers.
The detail in that story about how a bunch of the players showed up to the football facilities and they couldn't get in, like their cars didn't work anymore. I was like, oh my God. Like, obviously like we're in the age of NIL stuff, right? And so you're like, people, I think a lot of folks might be like seduced into thinking that that sort of like manager and employee relationship is sort of like, it doesn't exist in the same way, because like any player can theoretically like be their own business. But like, that's not every player, right? Obviously, we forget how just like generally disempowered most players are going to be relative to the coach, especially when your coach is a one of the biggest stars in the history of the sport, right? It was really hard to read, and the fact that you brought up Shedeur and Deion sort of like licking shots at this kid, like like on Twitter is like, it just, all of it seems so out of pocket, and of course Deion, he's going to twist it into some like malign charter school principal language, like these negative influences. These brothers don't have the positive mindset, and that's why, like, you could just see him sort of like jujitsuing it into something that's like very self-aggrandizing to make him seem like I'm one of the, I'm a strong black man that don't like. Come on.
When
bro.
he's not, when he's not like mocking guys for playing at Austin Peay, he's invoking Jesus. It's like one or the other tweet.
Right. I mean, the thing is, I have less of a problem with Shedeur licking shots at the kid, because look, kids will do that to each other, right? And like that, that if that didn't happen on X, that might have happened on whatever group chat or whatever else that those guys are involved in, right? Like I know that stuff goes on. I've been involved in that sort of stuff myself back in the day. But the Deion thing is really odious, like going after a kid like that. The Xavier Smith kid, he grew up in the Atlanta area, and so he idolized Deion. Like that's a well-known figure to him, somebody that was like, well, man, maybe I have a chance to play for this.
I can't remember if it was him or another player, but he was like, who left, who was like, at least I got to meet Deion Sanders. That to me was some sad shit, man.
Yeah, man. They're really respect these guys and really looked up to them, even though presumably they wouldn't have seen that much of his career, because they're pretty young, so they did not see Deion play, right? But obviously it meant something to him for Deion to treat them like that. That's really depressing, and I think I hope other, recruits, parents, and coaches and people are looking at that sort of stuff, because and I'm glad you touched on this, Gene. There's this suggestion from the Sanders camp and his supporters that black players are going to be drawn to him. That even though it's in Colorado, which is not very black, that he's going to have more appeal. That program's going to have more appeal because of who he is and what he represents to black people, so to speak. There was even this talk that Colorado was like Black America's team in the past year, right? Which is pretty sad given that it finished 4-8, but maybe that's kind of accurate, right? But the black players can see themselves in Deion and his staff, which includes Warren fucking Sapp. And there's something to that, then. If you're going to treat the players as expendable and even disposable if they play, then I don't really see the difference between playing for Deion and any other white head coach. Like, the idea of the black coach is that they can see and appreciate the humanity of their majority black labor force in ways that their white counterparts either can't or don't want to, right? So if I'm sending my kid there, like, that's sort of the bargain. It's like, okay, he's going to look out for them in a way that, like, maybe Frank Beamer wouldn't have, right? Or whoever, Sonny Dykes, whatever. These are going to be these guys are going to look out for him, not just on the field, not just for what he can do on the field, but what he can do after. And I'm going to help him throughout his life. But if Deion gets in there and just says, get the hell out of here, or like, I don't, the kids walk away feeling diminished by the experience, then I just, if you're a Deion fan and you feel that like he's special in some sort of way, you're going to have to bargain with the way that these kids are saying they're being treated when the cameras are off, right?
Joel, I'm like laughing because I now know like your mental map for random white coach is Frank Beamer. It's like, name a white football coach. It's like, I wasn't expecting that, but like, it's good to know. Joel, you've been talking about this for a couple years now with the way that he left Jackson State. Like, we knew who he was because of that, vis-a-vis like how he thought of, the black players who thought that they were a part of some kind of mission there, right? And then got treated the way they were treated. And again, this is number 2 on my list of things that I promise are not intended to be trolls. But Joel, you know who I thought of? Kim Mulkey. This guy's Kim Mulkey with less winning. Kim Mulkey with less winning. He's such a toxic personality. And the other thing that I always bring up with Kim Mulkey is that a bunch of players ride for her. Not everyone, but like she has her Shedeurs and Travis Hunters who will speak up and say she's great and she taught, she's like a mother to me, whatever people say about her.
Football players are primed to be really good and compliant abuse victims, right? Because like to get through the system, you like a lot of times you just like, I don't know if this guy likes me. I don't know how he's treating me. He's making me do this stuff. But you just say, well, I'm going to trust them. Essentially, you've got to trust that this guy knows what he's doing. He's going to get you from A to B, right? But a lot of times that veers off track. And you just don't know, like, okay, like this guy doesn't care anything about me or they're treating me like this. And so like I always just think about that with like the players that stand up for Mookie. And I don't want to, all these players have their own personalities and beliefs and whatever else. And they may truly ride for Mookie or Deion. But I also think that they're just so they're so captured. They're just so, they look at these guys, they're celebrities, and that they're just willing to do whatever they say. And that, they think that a lot of coaching and a lot of training is, functionally abuse, like the way that people treat people. And they just kind of ride along with it. And it may take years for them to realize, I don't know if that's the way that should have gone down.
Yeah, but Gene, how bad must it be for these Colorado players to speak up? Given the culture of just take it and don't complain in this sport and in this culture, to actually be like, no, this guy's like really, really bad, and to say it about somebody who is a legend in the game.
I think it says something. I mean, Xavier Smith seems like he's not going to have he's at Austin Peay, right? So he's not going to have a pro career, right? Like I think Deion is sort of banking on the fact that a lot of these cats are not going to have the kind of careers that's going to come back to bite them in the ass, you know what I mean? And not like, it's like, oh, this is just some random kid who plays one of the, tens of thousands of kids who play D1 football, right? It seems like that's part of the calculus. Like, it's interesting that the 5-star, the catch you mentioned was a 5-star, was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I'm not here for just clicks, right?
Yeah, that's pretty biting.
That's the kind of thing. Right, exactly, right. But for I think he's betting on all the kids who he basically forced out, right? Like, I think he's banking on the fact that none of them will sort of wash out somewhere else, right? I think a bunch of them have ended up at Power 5 schools or whatever. But like, Deion has always kind of been impervious to, right? Like, he's always been kind of impervious to criticism, and like, like he's always sort of just shrugged the stuff off.
How many more 4-8 seasons can he survive, Joel?
Well, I mean, not very many, but I also think that like, to Gene's point too, is that he's gotten away. I mean, there's really no cause for a person to start up a phony charter school and get a job in higher education. Like like Deion is probably the highest paid public employee in Colorado, right?
Easily, probably.
Easily, yeah, right. And like he was involved in something that bad, and then to get invited to work with, so like I don't know how impervious he is, but I also know that one thing that fans won't stand after a while is losing, right? And if you're generating this sort of heat, you know what I'm saying? And there's all this attention on your program. Like, it has to pay off at some point. Like, it can't just be, wow, Lil Wayne was down here. We had Jadakiss on the sideline, but yeah, man, we lost to Cincinnati last week. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, obviously, presumably.
All right, so we got Frank Beamer, Cincinnati. Just like keeping track of who's catching strays in this segment.
Median, just your median college football program is Cincinnati, I think, probably, or like Louisville, one of those two. But you know what, actually, I was reading the story and I thought, the comment that actually stung him the most, and Xavier Smith said this too. He said, it's rare you meet a head coach who genuinely wants to see every player on his roster succeed. He was talking about Scotty Walden, the coach he transferred to at Austin Peay and now at UTEP, because now he's at UTEP. Scotty Walden got a job at UTEP and he transferred there. And I bet that stung Sanders and his crew most of all, actually. They hadn't talked about it very much, to the extent that they've even read the story, but if they read it, I bet that quote stung them. And it's kind of true, because it's like, it's one thing to want to win, but it's another to be individually invested in these players in spite of the outcome or their performance, right? Like, it's really tough for coaches to like, you can't do nothing for me, you're a third string, long snapper, but, I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to do something for you. But like, the thing about Deion is that like, you have to show that you have to prove him a liar, right? Like you can't refer to your players as Louis luggage and or talk about it as exposable of their things. Like, and in fact, I guess if you could slow them down and get them to labor over every word in that sentence of it, they'd probably agree. I bet they would agree, but you say it like that and it's like, oh man, this really hurts. But they're trying to pretend that they're being something that they're not. They're in it for themselves. They're not in it for those kids. And that makes them not that different from most college coaches.
We got to move on, but I just think the most annoying NFL draft conversation ever is going to be about Shedeur Sanders. I mean, we already started to hear it, like in mock drafts for next year. There's obviously a whole cottage industry around that. He's number one in some of them. He's like a late first rounder in others, but you've got to believe that that tweet is going to be talked about and dissected and all of this stuff. And, you know, race certainly plays a factor in how he's going to be discussed. I mean, just think of the way that like Caleb Williams was talked about in terms of, you know, his personality and whether his teammates liked him and whether he sulked and whether he was all in it for himself. Like, there's legitimate questions about that with Shedeur, but the way that people, I'm just imagining myself just cringing with the way that it's going to be talked about and dissected. And I'm fascinated to find out where he's actually going to end up getting picked, if the offensive line that his dad built is going to allow him to survive the season.
To be honest, like Shedeur did play really well last year, but like I got to be honest, I didn't watch a lot of games who were getting their ass kicked. You know what I mean? And he took a lot of sacks last year. So
you saw that fourth down against TCU, though.
Come on, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? Sonny Dykes. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, if he can get through the year healthy, I mean, that's the big thing. If he gets through the year healthy, and will he have enough talent? I mean, the thing is he'll be playing in the Big 12, so it's not going to be as tough as the Pac-12. But he has a lot to prove last year. The assumption that he's going to be a first-round pick, it's interesting that people are making it. And maybe I'm seeing it through hater glasses, but I haven't seen that yet. But I guess, you know, maybe next year is a weak quarterback draft too. So anything is possible. So,
All right, Gene, you're going to be back with us for our bonus segment. In the meantime, everybody should, maybe you can listen to Code Switch when you're done listening to this, but check out Gene on Code Switch. Thanks as always for being here. Just love having you, man. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you for asking me.
Up next, we've got Stefan Fatsis back from Greece temporarily to talk with Alex Prewitt about banked-in Korean free throws.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.
Can you set the stage a little bit so people understand what happened?
In 1969, 14 black student athletes were kicked off their university's American football team for planning a show of support against racism.
We were really protesting our treatment on the field.
Amazing Sports Stories from the BBC World Service tells their story.
We became brothers that day when you did that to us.
We made a change.
Fighting for what we deserve.
Search for Amazing Sports Stories wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Last summer, an assistant coach for the Edmonton Stingers of the Canadian Elite Basketball League named Eric Fawcett posted this on Twitter. Interesting trend from the Korean Basketball League, where a number of players are 80% plus from the free throw line, shooting exclusively bank shots. Within a day, Rex Chapman replied with the exploding head emoji. Someone asked Malcolm Gladwell and Bill Simmons to do a podcast about it. Fortunately, it appears they did not. And Tom Haberstroh wrote about it on his Substack under the headline, "A viral clip from the Korean Basketball League can change the world." 2 days later, Slate republished Tom's post. Because the legacy media moved slowly, it took until November for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, within 3 days of each other, to publish their own features. And finally, after attending a KBL game with his mother, Alex Prewitt wrote the definitive 3,400-word takeout for Defector, seeking to understand why so many basketball players in South Korea call glass on their free throws and why non-Korean basketball players do not. Alex, I should note, wrote the best story about competitive Scrabble, not written by me, for Sports Illustrated a few years ago. He is with us now. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Sorry I made you read 3,400 words.
Oh, it was a delight. All 3,400 of them, each and every one. But first, kudos to your mom for attending a Soul Thunder Suwon Sonic Boom game during what you describe as a bonding trip to her homeland. How high on your to-do list, Alex, for the trip was seeing some bank shot free throws in person?
On mine, quite high. On hers, less so. But again, thanks to her for not only coming along, but in Korea, in order to buy tickets to a game, you need a Korean credit card, which she doesn't have. So she was able to, through a friend, got some help and acquired the tickets too. So she put in a little more legwork. And this is on top of, the many spreadsheets that we had and Google Drive folders planning what's become a nice annual trip for me as an only child. My parents separated about a decade ago, so it's something we started doing. And we've gone to increasingly far-flung locations, but this was the first time that we had gone to a place that I think either of us had ever been before together, but certainly neither of us had ever been to a KBL game. But once that clip that you mentioned came out, I became weirdly obsessed with it, as I often do in my pieces. And once the timing lined up that we were going to be in Seoul along with a Thunder game, I tried my hardest to at least pop in and see what we could see.
All right, so tell us a little bit about the history. What did you discover as far as how this started in Korea and how it spread? So it's now more than half of the top 20 shooters by free throw percentage are shooting bank shot free throws.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. One of the assistant coaches I talked to in the piece, Brian Kim, who coaches for Seoul, would periodically send me a list of the top 20 free throw shooters and would highlight who shoots bank shots. And it is, over 50% of the best domestic free throw shooters in the league are shooting this style that no one else seemingly in the entire basketball world does. Whereas the initial tweet kind of framed it as a trend, or at least maybe the implication was that it was a new trend. Digging into the history suggests it goes back several decades, at the very least probably to the 80s and 90s. There's a very famous player in the 80s and early 90s named Kim Hyun-jun. He popularized it to a degree that at least his protege, another famous player in the 90s and 2000s named Moon Kyung-eun, also known as the Rambo shooter, because apparently he shot very Rambo style and also looked like Sylvester Stallone. He seems to really be the player who popularized it to the point that it is today, where you have, an entire generation of the best free throw shooters in the country are shooting this style. And it seems to have just really spread that way, that players coming up would see their favorite player doing it and then want to do it themselves. Because every other coach that I talked to, and including Moon Kyung-eun himself, who now works in the KBL's front office, will say that they would not recommend teaching this to any player. So even the best guy to do this method says that he wouldn't coach it himself, which leaves me wondering, why had it taken off so much? And what is it about this one place that has caused this one particular method to catch fire in such a way? And I don't really have a good answer, because it doesn't really seem like there's any discernible benefit to it. Half the free throw shooters in the league do it, half don't. It seems for a lot of guys, it's just a comfortable way that they've found since childhood, and to change it at this point would probably cause more damage than good.
So, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there is some data showing that a bank shot, it can be more effective than a regular direct shot. And then I also read said, but it's also very difficult to master. So is it the case that to even be able to pull off that shot, you kind of have to be a really advanced shooter, or you have to kind of have a preternatural touch? Because it seems like it's sort of a self-selecting skill, right?
Maybe. I feel like it's something that if you practice it over and over again, it becomes repetitive to the point that you're not shooting. When you come straight on like that, you're not shooting for the middle of the rim, front of the rim, whatever. But it's just kind of become muscle memory over time. And this was something I didn't quite get into in depth in the piece, but I think I alluded to it, just how much more in general Korean players seem to like bank shots regardless of where they're shooting from. There's a phenomenon that players will take 3-point bank shots from the top of the key, which seems ridiculous to me, like from all angles. And in a way that, again, people who I talked to who are familiar with the Korean game linked to a cultural phenomenon, that it's something that American players and other import players will come in and be resistant to shooting bank shots because it's not necessarily cool, or it's kind of outdated, or it's what like old people do. So I don't know. It has just become kind of stigmatized, I guess, in part of the basketball world in a way that is the total opposite in Korea.
Yeah, stigmatized because it looks weird, and anything that looks weird is going to be suspect, right? It's like the granny style free throw shooting. Rick Barry was like a 90% free throw shooter. Barry was an asshole, so maybe that's why more people didn't adopt it. Will Chamberlain famously took some underhanded free throws. Big guys who have trouble shooting free throws seem to be the ones outside of Korea that are most likely to try different techniques. And you talk to some American players who played in Korea, and their reactions, I thought, were some of the most interesting because they were tuned in to the idea that this just looks weird and is a stigma, but I'm willing to listen, like Rod Benson, right?
Yeah, exactly. To the point that they not only listened, but adopted it and said it helped their game, and then went back playing in, say, in like Western leagues and would get made fun of because, like you said, it doesn't necessarily look cool. But yeah, I was looking for examples of places anywhere else in the basketball world where this happens, and found examples of several people who had gone over to Korea and played and been influenced that way. The one example I found randomly of somebody who came to it natively on their own outside of Korea was Terry Stotts, the former NBA coach, who famously abruptly left on the eve of the Bucks season. But he was playing in Europe and turned to it, I think, almost out of comfort, because he felt like it was a natural extension of like his shooting motion, and it would help him, and it turned out it did. And again, he had the same reaction when he debuted this, I think, back stateside or in North America, which was like, what are you doing? Are you insane? Like, why would you ever shoot that way? So I think it probably takes a good degree of courage for somebody to adopt this. There's no shortage of guys trying one-handed free throws, or various other shooting left-handed when they're right-handed, just trying to scramble and claw for any sort of answer for their struggles. And I do wonder why, especially for, say, like an oafish big guy who doesn't have a lot of touch but can just kind of like peg the ball, like Rudy Gobert. I don't know. Could Rudy Gobert just like a Papa Shot game, just kind of peg the ball at the backboard, and would his free throw percentages improve? I don't know. Maybe if you practice it enough.
Yeah, Papa Shot is a really good example, because if you ever run across videos on social media where you see people making like 5,000 Papa Shots in a row, they're often shooting it in just like a weird or idiosyncratic way, which is not the way that you would shoot in a normal basketball game or a traditional basketball motion, but it works for them. It also, a thing that just popped into my head is putting in golf. It's really similar in terms of a sport where you're kind of standing still. You have a lot to think about. There's a potential to get the yips or just to get inside your head. And so players use a long putter. They'll rest the putter against their chest. They'll do all sorts of weird things or things that might seem abnormal just in order to be effective. And in basketball, I mean, Shaquille O'Neal has said famously that the granny shot, the underhand shot, is for sissies, that you would rather shoot 0% than shoot that way. And so there are just these kind of cultural views or beliefs that don't necessarily make any sense, but just kind of get passed down. And it's funny about the bank shot free throw, because you don't necessarily think of a bank shot, Alex, as being something that's like, I hate to say it, like to echo what Shaq said, like for sissies. Like there's nothing inherently like, I think, dweeby or uncool about banking something off a backboard. It just marks you maybe as different. And also, it also marks you as a failure in some sense, that you can't do it the way that other people do.
Josh, if you went to a pickup game somewhere and somebody was shooting exclusively bank shots, don't you think that you would think they were a little goofy?
Well, no, Tim Duncan is the coolest basketball player that ever lived. Everyone idolizes him.
Point made.
The big fundamental.
Arguably one of the coolest ones now, Anthony Edwards, is talking a lot about how he wants to put more bank shots into his game. So maybe it's coming back into vogue.
I guess when we think of bank shots now, like in the last few years, you guys tell me if this is wrong, but I think of Russell Westbrook unintentionally banking. or Westbrook actually does shoot bank shots, but often he banks it and like totally misses the rim. And so I think, Alex, maybe that's a sign that the bank shot is so kind of out of fashion that in the last few years, at least, that's kind of the image that's conjured for me in the NBA when I think of bank shots.
Yeah. This leads me down the rabbit hole, though, of just why do backboards exist in the first place, and why are they so honking big relative to the rim itself if nobody's going to use it? So, yeah.
But I was also interested in the physics of this, and you make the note that the backboard is a cushion in a sense, that it decreases the momentum of the ball, and so in theory, at least, it allows you to put more touch on it. But sort of like what Joel was saying earlier, different backboards have different elasticities, and it just seems like you need to practice. Like the advantage that you can get from it would need to be unlocked via hours and hours and hours of diligent practice.
But don't you also point out in the piece, Alex, that the Korean equipment in the league isn't the same as NBA equipment. So the backboards are a little bit looser. The rims might be a little bit older, a little more forgiving. Does that factor into it too?
For sure. Yeah. Once you introduce the backboard into the equation, then it's another variable, right? So then you have to factor in, firmness and wear and tear, differences gym to gym, I think of which they're probably more pronounced in the Korean league just because of the lack of resources. But that was also something that I think Terry Stotts, if I remember, mentioned about Europe as well, compared to when he would go back in North America, just kind of the difference in how the backboard felt. And it made more sense to do it if there was a little more give and a little more cushion. But it might simply just not make sense, for instance, for an NBA player because of how much harder the backboards are and how consistent they are across the league. But then again, maybe if they are consistent, then somebody with all that sorts of practice and time could revamp their shot in a very non-traditional way, at least for in the U.S.
Alex, do you get the sense that if more and more people adopted the bank shot, or a few more people did, that it would be welcomed even among like coaches and front office execs that are looking for any sort of edge? Because it seems like, stylistic arguments are important a lot of the times too. Like they do matter to people occasionally, even if we know that the data may support something slightly more efficient. So did you sense like an openness to the idea that maybe we should force our, poor shooting players over here to try it? Like, get Andre Drummond out there doing that or something.
Yeah, I think the openness it will probably have to start necessarily with a single player who does it, and then from there it spreads. But maybe if Rick Barry's any indication, it's not going to, despite what the numbers overwhelmingly suggest.
Alex Prewitt is a freelance sports writer. We'll post a link to his piece from Defector about Korean foul shots, and his piece about Scrabble, and his piece recently in the Washington Post about the helmet phone and its debut at the NFL draft a few decades ago. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, I'm Josh Levin. My podcast, The Queen, tells the story of Linda Taylor. She was a con artist, a kidnapper, and maybe even a murderer. She was also given the title the Welfare Queen, and her story was used by Ronald Reagan to justify slashing aid to the poor. Now, it's time to hear her real story. Over the course of 4 episodes, you'll find out what was done to Linda Taylor, what she did to others, and what was done in her name.
The great lesson of this, for me, is that people will come to their own conclusions based on what their prejudices are.
Subscribe to The Queen on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now.
Now it is time for Afterball, sponsored by Bennett's Prune Juice, endorsed by Kenny Sailors, who says it was okay. Look, it's been a few weeks since the fight, so I won't shame you if you missed it, but maybe some of you recall that the very erratic Ryan Garcia won his junior welterweight fight over Devin Haney by majority decision on April 20th. Garcia was a heavy underdog, but knocked down Haney 3 times to earn a shocking victory. But it was a bittersweet win for Garcia, who missed his weigh-in by 3 pounds and thus was ineligible to claim Haney's WBC title. should it matter, really? I mean, Garcia proved himself against a fighter generally thought to be one of the world's 10 best pound for pound and seemed to set himself up for some bigger fights and paydays to come. Not so fast. Late last week, it came out that Garcia had failed 2 tests for performance-enhancing drugs conducted by the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association. That's VADA. It's VADA. ESPN's Mike Coppinger reported that the substance came back on tests on both fight day and the day before. Afterward, Garcia posted an LOL with crying emojis after the news came out, but later denied any wrongdoing in a live post on X. And in some ways, it all made sense because a lot of people, including me, thought Garcia had lost his mind. Like after a series of truly odd incidents on social media and in public appearances that were like all these allegations of drug use, the recreational kind, not the performance kind, and alcohol too, which were later seemingly confirmed by Garcia, who said he drank every night before the fight.
Isn't he also a Trump guy?
He did a little thing. He was at Mar-a-Lago, but I don't know if he's a Trump guy because I don't know how much of this is bit, how much of this performance and how much. But yes, he was with Trump not long after that win. But it's unclear what the next move is, but it appears that Garcia's win will almost certainly be overturned, and that will return Haney to the ranks of the undefeated. And for now, both fighters have said there's not going to be a rematch. But you know who else has some credibility issues on this front? Guess who is Devin Haney's substance Svengali? Who do you think it is, Josh, if I had to guess? There's one guy in the biz.
His substance, Svengali.
Yep. Mm-hmm. You like that? That was alliterative.
Is Don King still alive?
You'd better think. No. Our old friend Victor Conte, the man behind the Balco steroid scandals that tarnished the reputations of Barry Bonds, Marion Jones, and a few others. Haney endorses one of Conte's supplements in a video posted on the website of Snack. That's SNAC, which is Conte's supplement company. Conte told USA Today that he's been working with Haney for at least 8 years and met him through another fighter named Sean Porter. And in a 2023 Netflix documentary about Conte, because again, Netflix has all the money, Haney is shown training and using an oxygen mask at Conte's facility in the San Francisco Bay Area. Conte also works with Clarissa Shields and Terrence Crawford, who's the undisputed welterweight world champion, and about 20 other current or former world champions. So these days, Conte positions himself as someone committed to rooting PEDs from sports and only working with athletes who want to do the same. He said, there are a lot of things that work that are legal, and maybe, but already some of his claims have broken down. The 73-year-old Conte claims that he helped create the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, the nonprofit that conducted those drug tests that Garcia failed before his fight. And Conte cited his involvement with VADA as evidence that he is now committed to working against drug cheats. But one thing about that is that VADA says he's not involved with them at all. And he was not involved in the formation of the group. So, I don't know. Conte later clarified that he provided consultation to VADA and had just referred some of the initial boxes to the drug testing program. Anyway, it's an interesting moment for Conte to pop back up in the news. And in all fairness, as he points out, Josh, nobody knows more about this stuff than me, which,
there you go.
That seems like a fair characterization. So, Josh, who or what is your Victor Conte?
Mercifully, for everyone listening, I'm not going to attempt to summarize the beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. I will say that Kendrick's diss track, Meet the Grams, could have noted that Devontae Graham shot just 35% for the Spurs this year. But just ignore me. I really don't want to get in the middle of this. What I am going to do is rehash quickly, or maybe not so quickly, the feud between Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. And if you want more, you can always check out the Wikipedia page, Shaq-Kobe Feud, which I believe is more comprehensive than the page about World War II. First, it's important to know that the Lakers teammates attempted to have rap careers, with Shaq's being far, far, far more successful. He released 4 studio albums between 1993 and the late 90s, the first of which, Shaq Diesel, was certified platinum. He collaborated with Biggie, Ice Cube, RZA, Method Man.
You Can't Stop the Rain was a jam, man. That's actually a legitimately good song.
To the cranium, you know the name. Shaq aim to maintain money on the brain. Can't stop the rain.
Did you pay for any Shaq albums?
You know, I don't know how I heard it. I think I just saw it on TV. I used to run, when I used to run videos on TV. So
I do remember that. Back to Kobe. He did an album too. Did not get released except for the single KOBE featuring Tyra Banks.
Oh, man. Oh, God.
The album, which was called Visions, it leaked in 2021. You can do that research on your own time. It included features from 50 Cent, Destiny's Child, and Nas.
Wow.
Okay, back to the feud. So on the court, there was always a bunch of petty basketball stuff between them. Kobe hogging the ball, Shaq being out of shape. But they played nice enough together to win 3 straight titles with the Lakers between 2000 and 2002. Then, in 2003, Kobe was arrested in Colorado after a sexual assault allegation. The criminal case was dropped eventually when the accuser refused to testify. And a civil suit was eventually settled out of court, one of the conditions being that Kobe publicly apologized. Not long after the criminal charges got dropped, it came out in the LA Times, then was picked up everywhere else, that when he'd been questioned by police, Kobe told them that, quote, he should have done what Shaq does, that Shaq would pay his women not to say anything. Kobe also reportedly told the police that Shaq had already paid up to $1 million, quote, for situations like this. A short time later, Nas, who himself was later accused of really heinous abuse by his ex-wife, Khalees, and who you will recall appeared on Kobe's unreleased album, released a track called These Are Our Heroes, which went after Tiger Woods, O.J. Simpson, and Kobe Bryant.
You turn around, then you shit on Shaq. Who woulda knew? Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. He love a little...
It's way more extensive than that, but I do not feel comfortable playing on this podcast. Again, you can do your own research. Shaq, for his part, in a 2004 interview with Stephen A. Smith, said of Kobe's claims about him, how this guy can think he knows anything about me or my business is funny. And one last thing, I'm not the one buying love. He's the one buying love. After that, Shaq was traded from the Lakers, reportedly at Kobe's request, and won a championship with the Miami Heat. And then on June 24th, 2008, he got up on stage at the Village Underground in New York and famously said this.
Okay, Kobe, tell me how my ass tastes. Okay, everybody, Kobe, tell me how my ass tastes.
But that's not all he said. The rest of it is less well known, Joel, but let's keep rolling and hear how this continued.
I'm a horse. Kobe ratted me out. That's why I'm getting divorced. He said Shaq gave a bitch $1 million. I don't do that because my name's Shaquille.
That doesn't make that much sense, but
that wasn't great.
As Jonathan Abrams noted in the LA Times after the video of Shaq's freestyle went public, Shaq was suggesting that Kobe's comments about him paying off women were a factor in Shaq separating from his wife, Shani. A few days later, Shaq told ESPN.com, not very convincingly, in my opinion, I'm totally cool with Kobe. No issue at all. I was freestyling. That's all. It was all done in fun. Nothing serious whatsoever. That is what MCs do. They freestyle when called upon. Also, TMZ, to its credit, asked Nas what he thought. And he had this to say, I heard about it. Shaq is my man. Fuck Kobe. So there you have it.
That must have hurt.
Kobe and Nas did, it seems, bury the hatchet based on Nas's various Instagram posts. And they did that before Kobe was killed in a helicopter crash in 2020. Kobe and Shaq also seemed to put stuff behind them. And Shaq revisited his famous freestyle just a couple years ago in 2022 on an episode of the podcast Drink Champs.
The crazy thing is, the reason why he didn't get mad, because that's the same stuff we used to do on the bus.
Right.
We had bars. Right. We used to have battles on the bus. So, right. But, you know, like when you have people who think they know it all, they get in your bit, ooh, it ain't no ooh, because I'm not going to get in trouble. Right. I'm not going to get in trouble. What's going to happen? I'm going to get a spanking? Spank me, though.
Joel, Kobe Bryant once scored 81 points in an NBA game. He won 5 rings, one more than Shaq. But don't let Shaquille O'Neal or anyone else tell you that he had bars, because he did not.
I mean, he absolutely did not. I respect that he tried. That's something that, you know, as you get older, you're like, well, you know what? Kobe didn't have a lot of fear of failing, it seemed. So at least he gave
a
his
rational
shot at
self-confidence is an important quality in an athlete.
it's hard to be great if you don't believe that you can do something impossible. I also think that there's a little bit of revisionist history around Shaq and Kobe stuff. Like, because, I mean, this was a very excellent episode of Beef that you did, Josh. yeah, Afterball. It was really good. I'd forgotten a lot of that stuff. But
I didn't know the Nas thing.
I'd forgotten the Nas thing. But, you know, it just kind of, I don't know, maybe it was an era when everything didn't touch you in that way. But after Kobe died, I remember one of the people that I felt most sad for, which is sort of crazy because, like, you know, the family and all these other people, but, like, I felt sorry for Shaq. Like, Shaq seemed to take it really, really hard. And it didn't seem like they had actually reconciled in any sort of way. And so, like, I don't know, man. You know,
they were saying nice things about each other, and they did.
Right.
Sort of like Isaiah and Magic had their like little interview that they did together. They did have a sit down that I think was on, I can't remember if it was TNT or NBA TV, where Shaq and Kobe were like reconciling to some degree. I mean, who knows how genuine it was or what it was like in private, but.
And it could be they were never each other's guy. Like, yeah. I mean, whatever it was, like they could have reconciled, but never were really friends anyway. But just, you know, they shared something special. But, you know, do you remember the one detail? There's another detail from Kobe's death that day that always kind of struck with me, that hours before he died in that crash, you know who he texted before? It was Shaquille O'Neal's son, Sharif, who had been going through, he had like heart issues and had to sit out one of his years. So it's just, man, I really brought us down. This is really sad. But you did all that. You did this, Josh. It's not me.
That is all for this episode. Choose to feel about it the way that you want to feel. Don't let Joel tell you how to feel. And we've also got a bonus episode that's live right now about the Netflix roast of Tom Brady. Gene Demby will be back with us to help us analyze it. To hear it, subscribe to Slate Plus on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangup plus to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available right now. Our show notes are at slate.com/hangup, and you can email us at hangup@slate.com. And don't forget to subscribe and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. For Joel Anderson and Gene Demby, I'm Josh Levin. Remember Zelmo Beatty, and thanks for listening.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.